Hello and welcome to episode number 42 of the Wondrous Stuff Vodcast, broadcast live on Google Hangouts on air every weekend. This, as ever, is the place where you'll find news, information and commentary on science, engineering and technology subjects from the past week and beyond, and anything else that interests us from inside our tiny little human brains. As ever, my name is John Gardner, and to help us out on this journey to knowledge, let me introduce my colleagues Richard Smith and Ross Davidson. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
And can I just say cheers to everybody?
Cheers.
Because this week, let me take a slurp. This week is a new one for us, because although we've done a topic, a single, well, it was when we did blood. That wasn't entirely blood all week, the whole episode, was it? It was majority was blood.
Yeah.
But this week is we're going to try and attempt to do an entire episode on one topic, and that topic is alcohol. And the reason we're choosing this is because Ross is hungover.
Yes, I am hungover this week.
So
Hang on, we can't do that, because that would be like then we'll be doing it most Sundays.
It is true, Roger.
Roger?
Ross is fragile quite often.
You're drunk on.
Just a small one. Ross is fragile most weekends. So this is what gave us the idea, because when we were looking for subjects this morning, I sent a Hangouts message out to say what have we got, and it's like and Ross said, "Oh, nothing, because I'm too hungover." And there was the idea, was the seed was planted. So what we're going to do, the way we're going to do it, I think we'll cover the science of alcohol. Obviously, we may touch on some social aspects of it, and then there might be some myths and misapprehensions about alcohol later on. So we're going to start off, being that Ross is the planted the germ of the idea, and he is hungover. Ross is going to talk about hangovers.
Yes, so hangovers. So one thing I found from doing a bit of research into hangovers is what the medical terminology of hangover is, which I don't know whether you'll know. Do you know what a hangover is called in medical terms?
No, I have no idea.
It's a visalgia. Now, apparently this was coined by someone called Jeffrey Weiss, and it comes from the Norwegian word kveis, which means uneasy after debauchery, and the Greek root algia, which means pain or grief. So it's pain or grief after an uneasiness after debauchery, which I think is quite descriptive of a hangover, to be honest. So what is a hangover? I'm assuming most of you, well, you two definitely will know what a hangover is. But there's no sort of specific definition of a hangover, but there's a lot of symptoms. And symptoms can be basically a feeling like crap, basically, is one. Headache, sensitivity to light, loss of appetite, trembling, nausea, fatigue, dehydration. Obviously, you wake up in the morning feeling very thirsty, and just generally feeling down. Now, in terms of what causes a hangover, obviously, in medical terms, they don't know exactly what causes it. The only thing that they do know is that you can avoid having a hangover by not drinking alcohol, which seems fairly obvious, but that's basically all the medical research into hangovers is the only conclusion they've come to. But it can be made worse by, not just, obviously it's caused by drinking alcohol, but things like drinking on an empty stomach can make it worse, not having any sleep, being dehydrated, so not drinking enough water, and doing too much activity, so things like, if you're out dancing all night. These can basically make the symptoms of a hangover much worse. So, who knows what actually causes the hangover? What would you say is the reason you actually get hangovers then?
Well, I would have said dehydration is the main one, because alcohol is a diuretic.
Yeah. And
obviously, the cells in your body are, quite a lot of it is water. And I guess if your cells are less water, they start dying, is it? I don't know.
I don't know the answer, but I've got a feeling it can't be just dehydration. Otherwise, you would have a hangover whenever you were dehydrated. So the day after being dehydrated, you don't get a hangover. So it's
But I do. If I am dehydrated, if I don't consume enough water, I do get headaches, which is one of the symptoms.
but not like a hangover where it's like a 24-hour horrendous pain.
Yeah.
I've got a feeling, is it not just the fact that alcohol's toxic then?
Well, it's various things actually. This is why there's no sort of one reason that caused it. Like you say, the alcohol diuretic. What happens is when you drink it, it enters the bloodstream, and it causes the pituitary glands to actually block the creation of something called vasopressin, which is an antidiuretic hormone. So basically, without that chemical in your bloodstream, the kidneys just basically send all the water that you're drinking straight to the bladder. Which obviously, when you start drinking, you go to the toilet, and then suddenly you go to the toilet every other drink, because basically your body stops actually reabsorbing the liquid. And there was a study saying drinking about 250 milliliters of alcohol causes the body to expel 800 to 1,000 milliliters of water. So drinking alcohol actually causes your body to get dehydrated because you expel more water than you would normally.
Yeah, that's why your pee goes clear, doesn't it? And then people
go straight through.
I'll tell you what, Ross, you're getting through all of my topics really quickly.
I've got more.
Yeah, actually, the reason why I'd had mine written down here is because there was this concept. Now, it must be an Americanism because I've never heard of this thing, but it's called. It's one of the myths was break the seal. Have you heard that terminology?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Which is that basically that you don't, if you hold on long enough to go to the toilet, you're supposed to go to the toilet less throughout the evening, or something like that.
Well, I think it is one of these things. I think once, because I've experienced that before. You're quite happily drinking, and then you decide to go to the toilet, and then suddenly it seems 5 minutes later you want to go again. So I don't know whether it's sort of like the body sort of thinking, oh, that was quite nice, I'll do that again, sort of thing, or.
It's a myth. It is a myth by all accounts because it's a combination of the fact that you are drinking a lot and alcohol, as well as an alcoholic, it still has water in it, and so that's a diuretic. So you're weeing it out naturally, and then what you were saying, this hormone vasopressin, and that's telling your brain to just pass more of it more often straight to your bladder. So you are going to go more, and I think it's a myth.
Presumably as well, if your inhibitions are broken down slightly, that maybe, well, especially being British, maybe you hold back on going to the loo in social situations. Maybe when you're drunk, you're just like, I don't care less. I'm halfway through a conversation, I'm going. So I imagine that's like a part of it as well, is that you do what suits you, don't you, when you're drunk.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I've ever been that inhibited that I've not gone to the loo. But
well, people just go on the street; they don't even bother waiting to go to a toilet, do they?
Ah, yes, but I blame the parents.
I suppose you also get runners doing that if they've consumed a lot of water, so it's probably just being busting for the toilet and having consumed that much fluid, I suppose.
Yeah. So basically, you're expelling more fluid than you're taking in, and that dehydrates you. Now, the effect of the dehydration is obviously you get dehydrated, you'll dry mouth, that sort of thing. But you also get headaches, and this is obviously one of the main things about hangovers is a blinding headache. And basically, why you get that is because your body is trying to basically make up for the lack of water. And that water actually effectively gets taken from your brain. So your brain shrinks because the water is being sort of used by the rest of your body. And that causes pulling on the inside of your head, and that's where you get the actual pain. So your brain is basically dehydrated, gives you a splitting headache. You also end up losing sodium and potassium as well, which basically causes build-up of something else in the liver as well, which I think you get glucose in the liver, which again, it has a direct effect as well. So it sort of snowballs out of control. So yeah, so drinking plenty of water while you're drinking alcohol and before you go to bed is useful in trying to prevent that particular aspect of a hangover. But in terms of other causes of hangovers, some of it depends on what type of alcohol you drink. Now, this is probably going to be another one you'll miss, John.
Yeah, bloody well, probably.
Probably, yeah.
I'm going to be twiddling my thumbs for 15 minutes here.
But perhaps I'll pass it to you. Does this type of alcohol you drink have an effect on whether you get a hangover or not?
Well, actually, I can say scientifically that yes, it is in fact true to a certain extent. There was, in 2009, a study done by a scientist from Brown University in Rhode Island. Obviously, this is from the top of my head. I store this information consequently. So basically, there was a scientific study done back in 2009, and they had a group of 100 people they got them to drink vodka, bourbon, and an American whiskey made of corn. Do you like corn whiskey?
No.
And a placebo, so something.
Well, I've got a feeling the darker, the worse, which is the opposite of what Ross reports his experiences. Is that the way it's going to go?
Yes, it is. God. Yes, that is true. So what they found was, so basically, there'd been some anecdotal evidence, but nobody that some drinks will give you worse hangovers. Because I've always said that gin and tonics, which is my preferred drink, other than the old vino, of course, I don't have hangovers. And that's a bold statement, but I know for a fact that when you were used to out with my leaving do from work, I started drinking at it's probably about 3:30, and I was just on gin and tonics all night, and I was fine, and I didn't have a hangover. I didn't feel great, but I certainly didn't have a.
My feeling with that one is it's the way people behave on different drinks. It's they change on. So basically, if you have a gin and tonic, it's probably that you pace yourself quite evenly.
It's possible.
When you mix your drinks, I don't think it's the fact that you're mixing the content as much as it is that you're mixing the way that you're consuming it. So you're having a short followed by a large drink, and so you're actually probably, if you plot it out, drinking a lot faster than you usually would when you start mixing it. So I've got a feeling it's more that than it is the content of whatever's in them.
Well, this is what they were finding out. So they did a research team that took of the 100 people, they took blood from all of the volunteers to ensure that all the alcohol had left the body before interviewing them about how they were feeling. And so the findings were essentially that while alcohol in the drink did increase how hungover people reported feeling the next morning compared to drinking the placebo drink, bourbon made people feel even worse than vodka did. So it's what it seems, you'll have some sort of effect if you drink large amount of alcohol, but you might feel worse if you drink a dark coloured.
Really, the amount of alcohol is the biggest effect, though it's got.
Yeah, because what they think it is because there's an organic byproduct that's created when they ferment, and that's called it's called a congener. And there's essentially more of that in dark coloured alcoholic beverages or spirits than there is in sort of the pale, vodka, gin, obviously clear. So bourbon is thought to contain around 37 times more congeners than vodka.
There's actually, when I was looking at this, 4 studies have confirmed that same effect, so it seems to be quite well proven that is the case.
But you say, Ross, that that's exactly what you're...
Well, the thing is that I don't get a hangover if I drink Jack Daniels. I do.
Which is bourbon.
Exactly, yeah. I do get hangovers, and the reason I got a hangover today is because I've been drinking a lot of real ale. That gives me a hangover. Vodka I don't really drink, so
I guess we have no factual evidence about how much of these congeners each individual type of alcohol has. But obviously, using this this research and the fact that Richard's seen some equivalent research that's come to the same conclusion, you could extrapolate it to say that there's more congeners in real ale than there is in vodka or gin. Interesting. So yes, do you want to carry on?
I shall carry on because there's the congeners one. Yep, you've covered that. There's another one which can cause problems called acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde. And basically, this is a byproduct of your body metabolizing the alcohol itself, and it's actually more toxic than the alcohol. So basically, when your liver breaks down the alcohol, it creates this enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, and then the acetaldehyde is basically there's too many of them. There's something called the acetaldehyde dehydrogenase and something called glutathione.
Right now, well, let me take a guess because what I remember of GCSE biology, anything with an A is a catalyst.
Yeah. So
it speeds up a reaction.
So that reacts with glutathione, which has high quantities of cysteine, and together they form acetate, which is a substance in the vinegar. And basically, what happens is that then damages your body, and the liver runs out of the glutathione quickly. So then the acetaldehyde builds up. So it's basically there's a lot of other processes that once your body can't break down the alcohol, it backs up. So it runs out of the substance that's used to break this down, and it can't break down the alcohol. And I suspect what happens with that is you can't break down the alcohol. So the alcohol will stay in your system longer, and you'll probably end up waking up drunk.
Well, actually, this is a bit of the research I was doing. Acetaldehyde is what ethanol has to be converted into. So your body, to metabolize it, has to convert it into that first, basically.
Right.
That's the not the byproduct, but it is the product of metabolized alcohol, basically.
Yeah. So obviously that will contribute to the feeling of being, feeling sick. Your actual body.
Well, yeah, that is substantially more toxic than ethanol. Yeah. Your body converts it into something more toxic in order to get rid of it.
Yeah. And then finally, there's something called a glutamine rebound. And basically, this is partly to do with the fact that your body doesn't, you won't sleep properly. So basically, alcohol in your system, and obviously your body can't metabolize it, it stays in your system, and that stops you sleeping because it inhibits something called glutamine, which is actually a stimulant. And what happens? The body tries to make up for the fact that it's lost time by producing more of this glutamine than it actually needs, and that happens while you're asleep. So basically, you don't sleep properly. And obviously not having a good night's sleep is going to make you feel rough in the morning as well. So basically that's responsible for obviously lack of sleep. You're going to feel tired, you're going to be trembling, you're going to feel anxious, all those sort of bad things with lack of sleep.
So we know why it happens. We know why hangovers happen, and we know that the effects that alcohol has on your body. Is there any way that we can, other than not drinking, which quite frankly is not going to happen, other than not drinking, is there any way we can reduce the effects that we have in the morning by doing something the night before?
Not a definitive one. Like I say, the only sort of conclusive conclusion is don't drink alcohol. But obviously, having plenty of water is one thing. Make sure that you drink plenty of water while you're drinking and before you go to sleep.
You've got to wait until you sober up before that works, though, obviously, because once it bypasses the liver,
Well, that's it. Drink lots of water and don't weigh it out.
There is another one as well, which is eating. If you eat a lot of carbohydrates, it actually slows down the absorption of alcohol into your bloodstream. So if you eat a lot of rice or potatoes or stuff like that, and eating before and while you're out as well. So a lot of the reasons why the Mediterranean countries aren't just completely pissed all the time, because they incorporate in with their diet. So they'll have wine and food. Very rarely will they just sit and just have a glass of wine. They'll always have it with food.
Yeah.
And that there's a definite scientific background basis for that, for slowing the absorption into your bloodstream, and therefore a lot of the alcohol will just pass through, will not actually go into the bloodstream. So that's that's scientifically proven. But obviously it gets to a point where if you take in so massive amounts of alcohol, a little bit of food is not going to help greatly. So
Kebab always helps.
Well, yes, scientifically we have proven that kebabs help. Except, I tell you what does help as well: a Pizza London. Pizza London is a pizza with chips on it, half garlic sauce, half chili sauce.
That sounds like something.
Got me through university. That did.
Yeah, you would only eat that when you were drunk, much like a kebab.
Yeah, and also because if you get the massive version of the Pizza London, you've got breakfast as well.
It's quite good that we've evolved to want carbs in that situation as well, because that seems to be the food to go for, doesn't it? Once
yeah.
The best sort of drunken like pizza shop type purchase I've ever had. It was in Glasgow, and they do a thing called a munchie box in Glasgow. Which is
is this like in the chip shop, or is this a?
It's just from basically it's a large pizza box, and when you open it up, it's just full of everything, like chips and kebab meat and chicken, and it's just like imagine a pizza box full of takeaway food. Absolutely amazing.
Only the Scottish could do that. So in one hand they have a munchie box, the other hand they have a bottle of Buckfast.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's interesting because we're coming onto this now. We may as well talk about it. Because everybody seems to have a theoretical solution for their hangover or something that makes them feel better. For me, chips and mayonnaise always does it for me. I always remember that one particularly hungover Sunday morning in Alnwick, actually, and there used to be a chip shop just at the bottom of the bank going up out of Alnwick, right in there, and chips and mayo did it for me. That sorted me right out.
Strawberry milkshake for me.
Strawberry milkshake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Strawberry milkshake.
Okay. Richard?
Well, I've always done the thing of when I get in, have something to eat and try and sober up and put off drinking the water until I'm getting at least an hour after I've stopped drinking, and then introduce the water and try and have a couple of pints. And if you can do it, which is hard work, mind, because drinking the water can make you feel ill, but if you can do it and just slowly just keep at it, I found that works quite well. So just rehydrate yourself.
That's the night before. That's the night before.
No, the night of. So once you finish drinking.
Well, what do you do? Do you have anything to? If you do wake up with a stinging hangover.
No, it's too late, isn't it? It's too late. So what I do is finish drinking, come home, and then have the water.
Yeah. I mean, water is definitely helps.
If you drink the water while you're still out, like you were saying before, it just seems to just go straight through you and have no benefit at all. But if you or like you were saying, if you intersperse it, obviously that would work.
Yeah.
If you're out with a bunch of lads, you can have a hard time bringing that one up. I'm going to have water in between. It doesn't tend to go down too well. But if you get home and have water then that seems to work.
I mean, my main sort of like thoughts when I was looking into this and thinking about it was, if you actually look at all the details of hangovers and that, it's just another one of these things that makes you think, God, if alcohol was invented today, it would be banned so quickly.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of my friends is a nurse, and she's always on the critical care liver unit, and the amount of people who go in super urgent as alcoholics is it's incredible. The amount of people who do that, and she has always tried. Well, she's part of the group that are trying to push forward um, better labeling, sort of like health warnings, like the size that you get on a cigarette packet, on a bottle of wine or a bottle of beer or something, because it kills people.
Forty
Quite
thousand.
frankly,
In 2011, the figures were directly from alcohol, 40,000. That doesn't include indirect, and that's 2.25 million people worldwide, which is more than AIDS or malaria.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a pretty.
and
It's a pretty.
I think what's also and I'm probably on dodgy ground here, but there's also some of the biggest some of the cases that my friend on the critical care unit is from people who follow religions who abstain from drink, and they're the people who are looking for drink related transplants and stuff and dialysis. Yeah. So
But it won't stop me going out next Friday.
so have we covered everything that you were going to say, Richard?
No, I haven't talked about anything I was going to say.
Well, no, but you said, oh, that's something like I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, that chemical that Ross broke up there.
Well, in that case, you're going to talk about. Actually, it goes on quite well. So we've talked about the mythological hangover cures. We're talking about the science behind how it affects the body, how why you get a hangover. So we're all happy with all that, but we're still going to go out and get trolleyed at the weekend.
I'm not happy. Feeling rough.
And we're still going to go out and get trolleyed at the weekend. So what are the safe levels?
Well, there aren't any, basically. Scientifically speaking, it's not safe at all. But this is not the prevailing view. And even in health professionals, a lot of health professionals appear to believe that drinking in small amounts is good. So there's still this myth, basically. Scientifically, it's a myth because there's no evidence for it.
So the glass of red wine, like 1 glass, 2 glasses a week or something that's supposed to be good for you, that's just a myth.
Yeah, basically, any studies that have been done, the toxicity of alcohol and what it's converted into outweighs any benefit you would get. So this whole thing about cardiovascular benefits and things like that, it's the scientific consensus is that it's still not worth it. So yes, you can convince yourself that there's an upside, and there's a slight upside with some drinks, especially wine and things, but overall, on balance, it's not good to have any amount. And there is a view that it should be treated differently from tobacco because with tobacco they say there's no safe dose, but and with alcohol that there's a sort of like person's drinking gets to an unsafe level and then a switch is flipped. But scientifically, that doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, it's a toxin that kills cells whenever it's consumed. So yes, it goes. If you overconsume, like with most drugs, and you abuse the drug, it's a lot worse. But any level of consumption is killing cells, which is why alcohol gets used to preserve food and sterilize skin and sterilize needles, because it kills cells.
So the common thing of like people say, alcohol kills brain cells. That's a literal fact, is it?
I don't know about that being a fact. It doesn't kill off neurons,
right?
But it does. Obviously, that alcohol affects the brain and damages the brain. So overconsumption, the link to how much a glass would do damage isn't easy to show. But put it this way, the drink drive limit in the UK is probably quite conservative, but the lethal amount of alcohol that can kill you is just 4 times that amount. So So it's that lethal. So you know, any drug that's that lethal, any amount of it is obviously going to do harm, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's toxic to all body systems, particularly liver, heart, and brain. But all body systems are damaged by it. And a bit like you were saying, it has to be metabolized into a more harmful substance. And also, like you were saying, if you introduce that now, the view of people like Professor Nutt is, if you released a food product or a drink product that had that acetaldehyde in, at the level of 1 unit of alcohol would produce, there's no way it would get the market. It would never get approval for it. So yeah.
So I guess
also addiction. There's also this view that that maybe you can't become addicted, but actually a small portion of drinkers do become addicted from that first drink. So you can become instantly hooked on alcohol, and that can lead to alcohol problems.
That's like crack.
Yeah, basically, it sounds like
as addictive as crack. Then
yeah, but basically, people who've received counselling and help from alcohol addiction, a small number of them will report that they were hooked from the moment they had it. So, and I guess the issue is that with the drug, we don't know what predisposes those people. We've got no way of knowing. So it's Russian roulette every time someone takes alcohol for the first time. It's Russian roulette whether they become an addict or not.
But is it? I mean, is it depends on what you're actually drinking to get hooked, because a lot of these alco pops, I know for a fact that when I was sort of in my sort of early to mid 20s, alco pops were just coming out. So we had alcoholic lemonade was the first one, hooch, Two Dogs, and all that sort of stuff. And then we had all sorts of stuff of alcoholic, essentially soft drinks with alcohol in them. And I know for a fact that it's easier on the. You see, I mean, that's a Shiraz wine there. It's quite a complex taste. If you're young, if you're a teenager, that probably is not what you would go for.
Yeah.
You would go for something that has a high proportion of sugar in, which are these alcoholic.
But this is we're talking about alcohol rather than alcoholic drinks. So alcohol, regardless of what form it.
We are, but it's the social aspect of it as well. It's how they get hooked in the first place.
True.
If you give them a glass of red wine that has alcohol in it, but they're probably going to say, "Oh, I'm not bothered with that again."
Well, maybe, but then would you not, if that was true and that was a big factor, would you not expect in countries like Russia, where from a young age they drink neat spirits, would you not expect that there'd be less alcoholics there, or less young alcoholics there? But actually the opposite is true.
Actually, while you're on that topic of Russian alcoholics, I've got some statistics here, and this is part of a little quiz that I'll do it now, actually. So, can you guess where the UK stands in the world? Who drinks the most alcohol per person stakes?
I would imagine near the top.
I'll go. 12.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's 33 in this list.
Oh, I'll
go top 10. That's what I mean.
Okay, in the 33 of the list, this is compiled from the OECD health data, and this is 2013, I think. So you say top 10. We're actually not. We're just outside the top 10. We're in number 15th, and we're joint with Switzerland and Australia. Joint 15th. Funnily enough, what you just said, Richard. The high.
All my Soviet bloc countries have got to be the worst.
Oh yes, absolutely. So we've got Estonia number 1, with 12.3 liters of alcohol per person per capita, and then we've got, and then amazingly, and this is quite amazing, Austria. Austria is second.
Austria.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have. See, I always thought the Scandinavian countries were out there.
Scandinavian countries are quite low down, actually.
I think with them, they don't have like a social problem with it, so they don't have a binge drink problem. But what they have is, I think the people who are like very, very dependent, they have more of those, with the hours of sunlight and that sort of thing.
So,
low populations as well sometimes give you a bit of an anomalous result.
Yeah, Finland is one place higher than us. So
I think you've got to be careful with low populations because it can skew results a bit, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of it's skewed for the relative size of it as well.
So in terms of the measurements, what's the UK's like consumption compared to the top one?
So we're 10 litres per capita, and the top is 12.3. So we're kind of high.
So is Ukraine and Belarus and all those sorts of places, are they above us then?
Yeah, actually, let me have a look at the.
So how are the Irish and Australians? Because I'd imagine that's a bit of a myth. I bet they're about the same as us, so they are.
Okay, right. Okay, so this is pure alcohol consumption among adults aged 15 plus in litres per capita per year, for pretty much every country now. And what we've got in the top 10 or the top section are Belarus, Moldova, Lithuania, Russia, Romania, Ukraine, Andorra, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and then slightly less are Portugal, Serbia, Grenada, Poland, Latvia. Then we got Finland, South Korea, France, Australia, Croatia, Ireland, Luxembourg, Germany, Slovenia, and the United Kingdom.
So the Irish have a totally unfair reputation then, basically.
Well, no more than France. I mean, France drinking it like it's water. Well, it is over there.
No, but I mean, Irish have a reputation of being lots of drunks, which obviously is totally unfair by the sounds of it. There's plenty of other countries above them.
Oh, yeah. Well, Australia's above them, but we all know about Australians drinking.
But they're drinking, by the sounds of it, they're not even that high either, though.
Well, it's in terms of, they might not be high on the list, but the top lot of countries are quite high.
How many litres is Australia then?
Australia 12.2.
So only. Yeah, so
Belarus is 17.5 litres.
I'm not surprised by those stats, I must admit.
And then on the lower side, right at the bottom, let me just change this around so I've got the lower at the top. Kuwait, funnily enough. Libya.
Right, so is it just totally outlawed, basically?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, no, you allowed it in hotels, I think, international hotels.
Only if you're a non-Muslim, though.
Yeah.
So basically, it's outlawed for the
population.
But
if you look at the bottom list, it's a lot of the Muslim countries. So Kuwait, Libya, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Bangladesh.
Well, even
Niger.
I'm wondering if some of those stats are not true, though, because would you self-report? Because a lot of the time you'd be fearful of reprisal, but also probably self-delusion, like. If it's against your faith, but you do it anyway, would you actually just kid yourself and say, "Oh no, I don't do that"?
Well, it's entirely possible because these ones are World Health Organization statistics.
Yeah.
But probably they're getting reported back from the governments. So
in terms of addiction, what would you guess percentage-wise? People users of alcohol become addicts? Bearing in mind, I think heroin is about 1 in 8 or something like that. It's not like every second user as people seem to think. It's.
I would guess probably 2 as well. I would say around 5% or something.
5%, John.
I would say it's much higher. So if you're talking, I would say.
Bear in mind, if you're going, well, I'll not skew you, but this is percentage of users, so that means that obviously Ross is saying.
And what you said, alcohol's percentage of users that alcohol is a problem for.
Yeah, well, or get locked into addiction.
So addiction. I think it's a lot higher than everybody assumes. I would say it's, what, 30% of the population?
It's 10%, so between
Is
the
it?
two guesses.
Okay. I'm just naturally skeptical.
But I think that's quite worrying when you think, well, we did this before, didn't we, about the harmful drugs, and I did a little bit about addiction and harm, and alcohol came out top as one of the most well, it was kind of like up there with heroin, basically. But in terms of what you were saying before about is there a benefit of drinking wine, Professor Nutt's article said that there's been no randomised trial that actually supports that, a benefit of low-level alcohol intake. There's been population trials, but he warns about that is there was a population trial that suggested hormone replacement therapy, so not related to alcohol, but hormone replacement therapy was beneficial for postmenopausal women. But when they actually did a controlled trial, they found out that it isn't beneficial, it's more harmful than good on average. So that was one of those things where people's perceptions, the placebo effect, what have you, people self-reporting got in the way because they were getting a course of treatment. They felt treated, and so they reported that it was good. But actually, when a randomized controlled trial was done, hormone replacement therapy is not good. So they've actually stopped doing that now. And he's basically implying that the same could be said of alcohol. People with low levels of alcohol in population studies, they may have a lifestyle with low alcohol consumption where they're quite sensible people, and because they believe this myth, they're sensible people who partake, but actually the alcohol's not leading to them having better health. It's just that they're people making good choices. So it's just a correlation rather than a causation there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that the NHS, the National Health Service of Great Britain, have published some a page on hangover cures on their website, and it's quite interesting. And it's also quite, the way it's written is quite dry and humorous, because it gives you things like myths. Hangover cures are generally a myth. There is no cures for a hangover. There are tips for avoiding hangovers, or for easing symptoms. Like you said there, Ross, the best way is not to drink. If you decide to drink, do it sensibly and within recommended limits. To minimise the risk of future serious health problems, men shouldn't regularly drink more than 3 to 4 units a day. So that is 3 units.
But you've got to remember that's a limit. So it's not saying that's fine. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like saying, you don't want to take in more carbon monoxide than this level. You know what I mean? It's safe to take in 0.03 millilitres of carbon monoxide per day. Yeah. But really, you want to be taking in none if you can.
Well, I mean, the chief medical officer has been asked to put some limits down.
Yeah.
And generally through consensus, they've come up with something
But do you not think that in people's mind they willingly they let themselves think that means that's okay, and that really isn't the message, is it? The message should be no amount's okay, but the less the better. Because the evidence that is there seems to suggest that it rises with the amount. So yes, a low amount, like a low amount of refined carbohydrates or a low amount of lots of things that are bad for you, it's going to have a negligible effect. It's going to be difficult to measure, so you're not going to see studies saying, look, this is bad for you, but it is toxic, so any amount is not. Basically, it's like cigarettes. Obviously a pack, smoking 40 a day, everyone knows is terrible for you. But I think people are also sensible enough to know smoking 1 a day is bad, but it's just 40 times less bad than smoking 40. And the same appears to be true with alcohol. A moderate amount just doesn't show up because it's so low that you're not going to see a population study showing it. But any toxicological study is going to show you that it is harmful to all cells in your body. But you can kind of get away with it to an extent with a small amount.
Yeah, and just to finish off the NHS, just to give it a sort of a non-biased, sort of official view, the tips that they've put down for keeping hangovers away are: don't drink on an empty stomach, which we covered. Before you go out, have a meal that includes carbohydrates such as pasta or rice or fats The food will help slow down absorption of alcohol, which we've also covered. Don't drink dark-coloured drinks if you found that you're sensitive to them, i.e. you become pissed quicker. They contain natural chemicals called congeners. Again, we've covered that. Which irritate blood vessels and tissue in the brain and can make a hangover worse. Drink water or non-fizzy soft drinks in between each alcoholic drink. So alternate, which is a good... That's worked for me in the past, actually. Carbonated or fizzy drinks speed up the absorption of alcohol in your system. Drink a pint of water or so of water before you go to sleep. Keep a glass of water by the bed to sip if you wake during the night, which is exactly what you said, Richard. And the bit on the end, which is quite nice. The morning after. If you wake up the next morning feeling terrible, you probably didn't follow this advice.
Warning sign that you've been poisoned.
That's just reminding me of my other, not hangover cure, but my other way of making hangovers less harmful to me, which is basically just sleep till the afternoon. So,
what lose? You see, well, this is one of the reasons why this is one of the reasons why I really don't drink much. I have one of those on a Friday and a Saturday. I'm having one on a Sunday because I'm off next week. But I need to have a bottle of cider or a glass of wine or gin and tonic once or twice a week, and I don't even always have them every week. And the reason why is because as I get older, yes, okay, it does affect me more. It does affect you more, and I don't know what the science is behind that, other than the fact that you're just an old codger. But I got to the stage where I begrudge losing an entire day.
I don't like it that way. You sort of think you go to work on the Monday and you think I've wasted the weekend. I've done nothing. I've sat in my dressing gown all day. And it doesn't the sort of positive experience you have for the night that you're out drinking doesn't outweigh the loss of the weekend.
So, yeah. Well, I think the key is, which I don't follow my own advice, so I should be careful not to sound too preachy because I never do this. But the thing is, you could have a good night after 5 or 6 drinks. If you cut it off, then you're okay the next day.
Yeah.
But actually, it's diminishing returns, isn't it? Once you're drunk, you should just stop drinking. But you don't, and for me, that's when I end up going hell for leather after I'm already drunk, and then that's what ruins the next day.
And usually you forget that period.
But that's the addictive nature of the drug, basically. The drug lowers your... That's why it's dangerous, is it lowers your inhibitions and makes you overconsume, doesn't it?
That's the most annoying thing, Again, we're saying that this alcohol as a drug would never be made legal. But even if it wasn't around now, and you explain to someone the effects of it, and they say, oh yeah, basically you get married, and then you end up... What happens is you end up spending all of your money. You can't remember the experience, and you feel rubbish in the morning. People would be like, I don't know.
Is there any myths around the memory thing, John? Because I've always thought that's total bunk, because I've never personally not been able to remember.
Really?
Well, there's a myth around... There's a myth around if you actually black out. I mean, there's, sometimes you say, "Oh, I
don't remember what happened at all last night," and I think, rubbish. There's no.
When I was at university, I drunk so much cheap. Oh God, actually, it might have been antifreeze, to be honest. It was very cheap wine. Okay, it was white wine from the corner shop in Sheffield. This was, and it was a litre bottle of nondescript wine that, quite frankly, I've never heard of since or before that time. It was bloody awful, but needs must at the time, and I remember blacking out. The last thing I remember of the evening was going into the Midland Bank as it was then, God, it shows my age, the HSBC Bank now it would be, but the Midland Bank at the top of Fargate in Sheffield, if anybody knows where Fargate is, it's just up from the Crucible Theatre. but it's on the corner. It's on a little edge that the bank was. And I remember going in there with my Cashpoint card and getting some money out. That is the last thing I remember of that evening. The next thing I remember is waking up on somebody else's couch, the other side of Sheffield, but me not knowing where I was until I actually got out and saw a bus going into the city centre. And I can't remember, and I've never been able to remember anything from the point of getting the cash out of the bank to the point of waking up the next morning. Now, it does say that what I did find out is if you do black out, it's impossible to remember the... Now, this is not just drinking a lot, but...
Anyone blacking out, yeah.
If you black out, it's impossible to remember the part... that bit of... So no matter how hard you're going to remember, because the part of the brain that encodes the memory has switched off.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And so if you do think that you remember, some of it's coming back.
Yeah.
They're essentially false memories.
Story about it and then interpreting it as a memory,
Yeah, they're false memories. So that bit is
well,
actually...
I was on a night out with someone who always told a story about this, which I let it go because it was a funny story, but told a story about this on a night out. And I pointed out to her 10 years later, by the way, you weren't there. I might have told you this before, but I said, you weren't there. And then I told her something about the night when she left. And she actually left, and it reminded her that she left at that point, so she couldn't have possibly been there for what she... But she didn't realise, and she was saying, God, I've got like an implanted memory that never happened. I said, it just shows you when you're intoxicated that how... Well, I guess it's more the implied story afterwards. People told it, and she got on board with it, but she wasn't there.
There you go.
I've definitely had the loss of memory thing, you know, and not so much. I mean, I suppose the black and white thing, it is sort of like you say, it's just your brain just goes, I can't be bothered to
yeah, like if you're intoxicated to the point where you're not really paying attention and you're not taking the memories in.
Yeah,
I can understand that.
Yeah,
but
that hurts.
I think sometimes people behave in a way that they regret the next day, and then they'd rather they hadn't done that, so they convince themselves that they've got no recollection. That sometimes I think there's an element of that going on.
What?
I want to just talk about the science of the neurotransmitters and stuff like that. Do either of you know how it works, what the action of alcohol is on the brain in that sense? How it makes
in terms of actually getting intoxicated.
Yeah.
I know the actual feeling of being drunk, like physically drunk, is to do with it affecting those things in your ear, the things that are all like that. It causes the liquid to get less viscous, so basically it moves when it shouldn't be moving. That's why you actually sort of fall over.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual...
No, I meant the buzz part, the actual part that you do it for.
Well, does it have anything to do with endorphins, or...?
No, it's basically a neurotransmitter system. I'll not try and pronounce the full thing, but the shortened version is called the GABA. So it's the neurotransmitter system GABA. And that basically is the thing that keeps the brain calm. And alcohol relaxes the user through mimicking and increasing the function of the GABA. So that's how it works.
So essentially, it's got no control.
It just increases the function of that neurotransmitter so that you feel more relaxed than you would ordinarily. So it just abuses it basically. And I mean, this is how most drugs work: is they either suppress or increase the take-up of something. But so in theory, you can make an alcohol surrogate that makes you have that sociable, relaxed feeling, but without the alcohol. So you don't need alcohol. Alcohol has that effect on you, but you don't need ethanol to do that, theoretically. At the moment, we don't have anything else that does that exact thing, but it should be possible to manipulate that neurotransmitter without the chemical.
So in future, you could take a tablet that does exactly the same thing?
Tablet, or you could make it into a drink or a gas or whatever. And that's actually what Professor David Nutt is working on now, is an alcohol without ethanol.
Interesting.
Well,
we're getting into...
Maybe technically it won't be alcohol, but a drug that gets you drunk. A drug that gets you drunk, but without the... And you know what it is? I've got a feeling that the population won't like it for some reason, because, like you were both alluding to, I think if you introduced it now, people would be very skeptical of it. But because of status quo bias, they're fine with it totally fucking you up. That's fine. But if you introduce it now, people will be like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah, the words would be like that. No, we don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think even if you made it identical, I think people would go, oh no, it's different, it's not very nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but that will be interesting. I'll certainly be up for that if you can get that drug without the negatives. Who wouldn't want that? I mean, it'll come with its own risks, and maybe it'll come in a form where you could abuse it even more and damage that neurotransmitter by going well beyond the amount of alcohol you could consume, and it'll have its own problems. But it'll be interesting. I think he's got some prototypes already, because that was 2011 that he was talking about doing that. So,
well, that basically it brings us to the end of the show. We're pushing an hour. Who would have thought we could talk? Well, actually, we know we can talk for just an extraordinary amount of time about a very similar thing. But this was on the first time we've ever done it on one topic. There's one thing that I'd like to finish on, and this is the old alcohol or the old wives' sayings of things like never mix grape and grain. You know, the one that was another thing that we didn't touch on, and that's supposed to sort of keep you all right and stop the stomach from being all horrible.
Drinking something like beer before wine makes you
there's the liquor before
stronger, basically.
Yeah.
So there's never mixed grape and grain. So anything that's got grain in, so anything that's like a spirit, distilled spirit, or anything that's like got grape in, so wine, don't mix them. Liquor before beer, never fear. Beer before liquor, never sicker. So that's like an order. So if you start off the evening with beer and end in a spirit, you're supposed to be ill and turn it the other way.
That is exactly what everyone does, though.
Yeah, that's what
just complete bunkum, basically. It's just the amount of alcohol, because by the time it's all metabolized in your body.
I was going to say, but that one may be true in the sense of, not for those reasons, but if you increase the percentage alcohol for the percentage liquid as the night goes on, you're probably in for a worse time, aren't you?
And I guess if you have something that we know is stronger, it makes you, like a dark-coloured liquor, a dark-coloured spirit, you might be presupposed. But if you drink a lot of alcohol, you'll get ill. That's a good point.
Me and Ross had a conversation before about, like, if you wanted to consume a set amount of alcohol, so you want to do 10 units or whatever, we didn't research it, we just said, what do you think? Yeah. And my guess was, if you just whack it at the beginning, and say you had to drive 12 hours later, would you be better spacing it out, or would you be better just front loading it? And the answer is, you'd be better spacing it out, because what happens is, if you front load it, it inhibits your ability to metabolize it. So basically, you get much more drunk, even over the 12 hours, than you would spreading it out. So that adage about you're best off pacing yourself, that one is one that actually is true.
Well, here was the myth. This is a myth. This based on that, but it's a myth. The myth is that you can have one alcoholic drink an hour and still drive home.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely right.
First off,
more than an hour for a start.
First off, it's more like one drink every 2 hours.
Yeah.
And for a typical man, this translates into about 7 grams of alcohol an hour. So the standard serving of a bottle of beer is about 14 grams of alcohol. So it takes about 2 hours to fully metabolize it. So most people, if you drink one drink an hour, you're going to become more impaired each hour. For that sort of standard man, the rate of one drink an hour, 4 hours of drinking is enough to get you legally drunk.
I'll tell you one. I know we're trying to wrap up here, but one thing that doesn't personal experience that doesn't tie in with what we've been talking about is, and I don't know if you share this anecdote, and it probably is a load of rubbish, but if I'm drinking and then I stop, I can get the hangover during the night, Whereas it seems as though if I carry on drinking, the hangover's deferred until the morning, which actually seems counter to what we've been talking about, because really that's what you should do. But I know that if I stop at 10 and I stay out until 1, I will get the hangover when I'm out, even if I then switch to non-alcoholic beverages. So it's almost as if...
Well, I think what it'll be is...
Alcohol's keeping in.
The hangover will probably kick in a couple of hours after you stop drinking. But what happens if you drink until you go to bed? By the time it starts kicking in, you're asleep.
Yeah, but why wouldn't it just kick in after the amount of alcohol rather than... Like, why is it... It almost like implies that it's waiting for you to stop before punishing you for it, which doesn't really make any sense.
I think because when you're drunk, you don't care.
And on that bombshell. Yeah, anyway, we're going to wrap it up now because we're over the hour. So, you know, we're going to... It was an experiment. Well, I certainly enjoyed it. You enjoyed it, lads?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Two parts, show on one topic.
So basically, we want your feedback. We want to know if you enjoyed that format, if you enjoyed the topic, if you want to correct us for some of the stuff, because no doubt we've made some mistakes there this evening. But just send it to our normal methods of communicazione, which is, of course, Twitter. We've all had our Twitter handles on again this evening. Mine went off. Mine's back there now. Email address. We've always got the wonderofstuff@gmail.com address. We've all got access to that inbox. And we've got the blog, the website at wonderofstuff.blogspot.com. You can view all of our past archives in video form on YouTube, and there's links on this website here from that. But also, as from a couple of weeks ago, we've now got it all as audio RSS feed, and you can whack it into iTunes or Feedly or whatever you use to listen to your podcast, and you can have it as an audio-only experience. So, from us until next time, then I think that's a jolly good show, and bye-bye.
Bye.